They have Allagash white here.
Do they? You know, I actually don't like that.
I'm going to order it
Cool.
in honor of your book.
That's fantastic. This Pilsner, please. Thanks.
Do you just
Sure, yeah.
I asked him to do that.
That's fine. I usually bring two forms of...
This is really nice. I figured I'd bust your chops a little bit because I was looking at your photo in the back of this book.
That's me.
You don't look more than 14 years old here.
What,
do people bust your chops for you looking eternally youthful?
Oh yeah, ever since I was a little kid.
Well,
cheers. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks for having me. Allagash beer.
Yeah. Where'd you get the name Allagash for Elliot? The last name?
There's this river in Maine, the biggest river in Maine, the Allagash River. When I was trying to conjure up like a, sinister robber baron name, something like Carnegie or Vanderbilt or Rockefeller, Allagash just kind of popped into my head.
Right.
It felt right. It felt scary to me.
It's got a gnarly sort of like Allagash.
Yeah. I first got the idea for this book when I was in college, and I read this great book about Ivan the Terrible.
Okay.
And I was blown away by how young he was when he started committing his murders.
How old was he?
He was 6 years old, and he was already...
He was a murderer at 6?
A murderer at 6, incredibly precocious murderer. And he was evil from the get-go, He wasn't...
Precocious murderers are always the worst.
They're the worst, they're the worst. I thought I'd write an Ivan the Terrible novel, sort of like that great Graves novel, I, Claudius, sort of like a period novel. And then I started thinking, and also wouldn't it be more interesting if Ivan the Terrible was born, right here, right now?
Sure. In New York City.
In New York City.
Yeah. You've had collected comedy books before that collected, pieces. What was the major difference going from someone who's used to writing shorter pieces to writing a longer piece? How did that how did your approach change?
Good comedy novels, they're made out of little premises. If you read Catch-22, if you read, Confederacy of Dunces, they go off on tangents.
Huge tangents.
And it's, when you have a few characters and they live in a house and they're living their lives, you can really get fenced in. So I realized that if I was ever going to write a comedy novel that it was actually readable, and people actually want to finish voluntarily, I need to have a character who could go anywhere and do anything whenever he felt like it.
Saturday Night Live, it seems like writing for Saturday Night Live and writing a novel would be very, very different forms of writing.
Yeah.
Is there anything that's the same?
At the end of the day, you are still writing premises. You're still coming up with situational comedy. You're still taking a normal situation and thinking, what could go horribly wrong here that would elicit laughs? What's the worst thing that could happen? At the same time, there's, it's nice to be able to write, to relax into a story a little, and have paragraphs that aren't stuffed with jokes. Sometimes you come up with a premise that you really like and you think is really conducive to joke telling, but to set it up, it's going to take like 3 pages. And you can't have 3 minutes of setup on a sketch show, with 6.5 million people watching. So did
you start off just writing right away, or did you work with other writers, or how did it go?
They throw you right in. They throw you right in with the sharks. It's crazy. And it can be scary, but it's also exhilarating. One thing I learned at SNL was how to try to think visually. It was like my 5th episode or something, or 6th episode, and I wrote this sketch for Ellen Page, this Peter Pan sketch. Captain Hook is very mad at his crew because they haven't yet murdered this boy. How hard could it be to murder a boy? It became the most visually complicated thing ever because the sketch had to have, and just production-wise, it was crazily complicated. There was music, there was choreography, there was original songs, there was
a wire,
there was a flying, there was special effects, there was smoke, there was a green screen for Tinkerbell. Because after I wrote it, I was just like, well, I'm excited to see this on Saturday. And then it was like, oh no, you have to put it all together.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was 72 hours of me frantically trying to learn what a green screen was, and talking to the amazing fly guys, and being like, can she fly that way, and but luckily, the senior writers helped me through that one. But it was when I started that job, I never ever saw things at all.
The last question we always ask the writers who come on this video is, who is your favorite hard-drinking writer?
Favorite hard-drinking writer?
Or an alcoholic writer.
Yeah.
If you could
God, there's so many to choose from.
I know.
Golly. Truman Capote? Well, but I just read Kingsley Amos's drinking book on drinking,
You know,
And
when Christopher Hitchens did the show, Kingsley
Yeah.
Amis was his favorite alcoholic
Yeah.
writer.
Yeah, that's one of the all-time great drinking books, and that's saying something.